So this is Hex-Files. I'm Josh.
And I'm Tamara.
And today we've got special guests from a little podcast you may have heard. It's Old Gods of Appalachia. And we're joined by Steve and Cam, creators and writers and all around, I guess.
Voice actors.
Voice actors. Yeah, you guys do it all, right? Well, not all of it, but.
We do what we can. Yeah, like we have family that help us out, but it's primarily.
Yeah, we actually create the podcast. We have some admin help on the back end, but
but as far as actual we create things out of nothing with our brains.
There you go.
And blood and.
Well, we're glad we're glad to have you on.
Viscera.
We've been fans since it started and captivated since then. And I just talked to Cam on the other podcast, but this one will come out first. So we'll pretend you didn't hear that one yet. We just wanted to have you on to talk about Old Gods, of course. And then we're all from Appalachia.
Yeah.
So where are you guys from originally?
Oh, well, we're from Wise County, Virginia. We both grew up in and around the town of Wise, which is probably about 15 minutes from the Kentucky border, maybe less. And about 45 minutes to an hour from the Tennessee border, depending on where you are in the county and how fast you drive and what year it was and what road was open. And
what year it was, what road was open, et cetera.
Yeah. So really southwestern Virginia, right on the Southwest Virginia, Eastern Kentucky line. But we're Southwest Virginia born and bred pretty much.
Well, I wanted to ask
Southwestern Virginia. Sorry, we say Southwest Virginia because that's what we say at home, but we always have to add the "ern" to designate that we're not from just Southern West Virginia.
Yeah, because otherwise people think you mean West Virginia. We're like, no,
it's very different.
Wrong state.
Because now you guys are basically our neighbors. We're all pretty close to each other, so it's like it was fun to kind of talk with you guys when it first started, and it's been amazing to watch the growth of the show and how popular it's become. But it's so cool because we like to hype up Appalachia and the area. And so y'all neighbors.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said earlier, Cursed, the original incarnation of Cursed was the first podcast we kind of became friends with on Instagram. And
pretty sure you guys are the first other podcast that shouted us out. And we're like, oh my God, look.
Somebody knows who we are.
Somebody knows who we are.
Yeah. Look.
It's not our boss.
It was like we came across it being advertised, and the name got us, the imagery got us, and it was like, I'm excited for this. And then to hear that first one and then it exceed expectations of like, man, this is good ass storytelling. Like it was,
It was amazing. I would have consumed it like a vacuum. I could not get enough of it. It couldn't come out fast enough.
We're like, damn, that was only like 15 minutes. Okay, how much longer we got? And like,
we had like weekly like sit around and all listen to it together, like house meeting, old timey, gather round children kind of.
Yeah, we put it on like the Bluetooth speaker, and it was like listening to like this radio thing, and it was like, I mean, things changed and it turned into road trips and listening where you can, but like in the beginning, it was an event.
It was.
And so we're excited to finally talk to you in person because.
I love it. I again, like I'm going to get this out of the way. We never thought it would get as popular as it is, or any more popular than it is.
No idea.
Like literally, I was waiting to be called out on like grammatical inaccuracies or my terrible Irish accent. People are like, oh, I heard the voice of the Witch Queen for the first time in forever, and tears came to my eyes. I'm like, that is the worst Irish accent I have, because I didn't want her to sound like like she was a freaking leprechaun or she was from Ireland. She'd been in the colonies a while, so I just kind of did this default generic touch of the old world type thing to them that sounds like it sounds, and I'm like, I'm waiting for other actors to like make fun of me or just tell me what shit it is. The first time someone criticized it on Reddit in the first week it was out, because everybody were kind of very, very kind and very gushy about it. Somebody's like, yeah, but this guy talks like really flowery and a lot. Do people really talk like that? And I immediately like messed up. Yes, please criticize me. Be my friend. Like, tell me what I'm doing wrong, what I could do better. And they were like, yeah, okay, bye.
Bye.
But like, I'm sure there are people out there that have feelings about it. Like, we had one pastor who told us.
Yeah, but then when I tell you not to say life bereft, you won't listen to me.
Nope. My prose is purple, and it comes dyed naturally that way. I will have my ocean of the life bereft, and you can eat a sandwich. on whole wheat bereft. I kept waiting for people just to hate it. And then like we just watched how many people were listening to it. And then we started seeing people who were way bigger than we are share it. And yeah, I've been doing an SCA medieval reenactment podcast for just like a radio show, just for the music of that group. And I was pulling out a few $100 a month on Patreon, but I was doing it by creation, meaning Patreon only billed my patrons when I made an episode. So if I could not get if I got used to having like that extra $300, I better hustle and put out 3 episodes that month if I wanted, that little tick. And so when we did Old Gods, we'll do a Patreon, but we'll do it like by month. That way we can create whatever we're comfortable with, and we don't have to like scramble. And I thought we would get together and do like handmade crafts. We'd be mailing out mason jars, like all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, like we broke 3,100 patrons the other day. And we just passed our 1-year anniversary back at Halloween. And the 1-year anniversary of season 1 ending was like back in January. So like,
we're still carrying on with, season 2.
Well, season 2 is also bi-weekly too.
There is that as we realized that every week was kind of insane.
And the original plan was every week we would have an episode, which would be a full-length story episode, and then I would just drop into GarageBand and put on some creepy stuff and do like a poem or a letter or some Easter egg that would connect, that would be shorter. That's where the first one episode 2.5, an interlude. But those interludes started stretching to like 15, 20, and then finally there was an interlude that was longer than a regular episode. So when we went into season 2, like everything's an episode. We had one interlude that was unexpected that reflected on the deaths of some of our friends. Because we felt like we needed to step back before we went into the storyline that's going on now, just because of the intensity of it. But so like we thought we would just have, and I remember, I've said this before, I remember standing in the little hallway outside that door, and I'd kind of fleshed out the idea of what the concept was, not even the first story arc, but just like Appalachia is the way it is, and the explanation is because no one was ever supposed to live here. It's because this was built by something else for something else. And I started sketching out some ideas, and I just finished doing a Bardcast episode, and I went and told my wife, like, okay, cool, we're going to have this money on Patreon and we can pay a bill. And I went in and I was like, I had this idea for a horror thing. And I'd been listening to like Black Tapes and Night Vale and Small Town Horror, which broke my heart, as did Black Tapes. And I heard these really promising shows kind of like not end strong for whatever reason. Maybe we were still figuring out how to do it. Like I'm not criticizing those folks, but I'm like, I don't want a show that does that. I don't want a show that sounds like it was recorded, out of a wax tube in Thomas Edison's butthole in 1743. But I've been listening to that stuff, and I went and told my wife, and I'm like, I had this idea for a horror show, and I bet it could make us like an extra $1,000 a month if we do it right. And that was like, holy shit, that would be phenomenal. And I'm not going to talk about money, of course, that's just tacky, but like, right. It's our full-time jobs now. Like we make our living.
I think if you're listening
to the show,
if you're listening to this and you've like, and podcasts and stuff, like, I guess when people start this, for the most part, there's people that are like, oh, we want to do this to monetize it. And I think, that's always in the back of like everybody's head, but it's, there's nothing wrong with being like, oh, well, we want to, we did our Patreon, starting with Kirsten. I've combined them now because I'm not running 2 Patreons.
Oh no, that's
too much work. And we have like some supporters that have been there since day one. It's like, why? Like, we love you for it, but it's like, and so it's kind of like when you go into it, I don't think there's anything wrong, but just to see the shows you follow and like to do well, like everybody's like, oh my gosh, that's amazing, because I think it's a medium that people really like to support. I mean, we have patrons that haven't even ever responded. I'm sure they read stuff, and it's like, but they're every month since it started, and it's like, I mean, I just don't know that anything I've ever done was like worth supporting like that. But so I think, people kind of understand too that, well, I don't want to talk about money, and it's not like, but it's just, when you have something good, people want to support it. And, you know, I don't think it's, you know, anything wrong, but yeah, like that extra 1,000 starting out would be like, well, that's amazing, because coming from what you do, that's how you're trying to make a living. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And
But it was
quality content. If you have a good product, you should be making money. I mean, it's sweat and tears. It's
it's our 8-hour day. Like today, my day was I got up, I did some more research on this one thing I'm working on for the show. I recorded some commercials for sponsors, which that's become a new thing that we never thought we would have. And we have some friends who turned us on to networking for ads. And that's actually like literally like Cam lost her job at the beginning of the pandemic. One of our friends who was helping us lost her job a few weeks into it. I was fortunate enough to be able to keep teaching through the end of last school year. But then like the show was in a position to support both of us. And then, you know, at first, like kind of me and my wife was able to go to grad school, and that's being paid for by a loan. So don't worry, like, Patreon fans, you're not paying for my wife's education completely.
You're not.
and then when we're not sitting on a giant pile of money eating fudge, you know, that's not happening. It's all, I got to pay off a doctor bill. That's that I thought would never be gone.
Normal people stuff.
Right. Yeah.
It's normal people stuff for sure.
Like Cam had to have a car repair done, and it wasn't like, do I have to sell a kidney? You know?
Yeah, exactly. It was.
So
like,
thank you, everyone who gives us $1 on Patreon or buys anything off Bandcamp or TeePublic or anything. If you're listening to this, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Number one, you made, like Cam says this, I'm going to steal her line for once. You made one of our oldest dreams come true, to be writers professionally and create art and make money from it. And like, that still blows. Like before we started this recording, my wife was in here kind of debriefing me on her grad school. Everything's online. So like her grad school's in the living room. And we were just talking about like, you know, we were both teachers for 16 years and how like, I thought I would work, you know, till I'd work a half day of the day of my funeral. Because you know, so I have to take the PTO. You know, I planned on making no money, and like we lived comfortably. I'm not going to pretend like we lived in dire poverty. We've scraped. I mean, we finished every month in the red, but we never starved. Like I'm not going to put on some show that we were like living out of a squat somewhere in the holler. You know, we were civil servants with a lot of debt, and now we're podcast creators still with debt. You know, it's like a product like now with extra cinnamon and debt. Now with cilantro and a better credit score. I taught high school English and theater. So much of what I do came from doing read alouds to middle school and 9th grade kids, doing readers theater. Every year for 9th graders, I would do Of Mice and Men, and that's 108 pages. And there are so many characters that are fun to do. Melvin, who everyone loves, Melvin from Baker's Gap, that is originally the voice of Carlson from Of Mice and Men, the guy who convinces the other dude to shoot his stinking old dog because they can't sleep, and he wants him to kill the old dog and take one of the new puppies and raise it. And Melvin is a nicer version of that voice, you know. And I've read Of Mice and Men so many times, like when I first fell into that voice for Melvin, it was just like, yeah, y'all. And it was like, oh, that's Carlson. I'm like, I'm just going to run with it. And, you know, because Carlson, because to me, that voice in my head is, Candy, why don't you shoot that old dog? He ain't got no teeth. Can't eat. Can't hardly see. Just hurting himself all the time. Shoot, Candy. Slim will give one of them pups that his bitch done have. Why don't you shoot that old dog? That's who that voice is in my head. He's not like, oh, Miss Walker, can I go die for the cause and be a hero to millions of people? He's not dying, y'all. Calm down. You know, like, that's not who that voice is to me, but it is now because he's freaking Melvin and he's taking on a life of his own. But yeah, so I taught high school theater and English mostly. I hadn't taught theater in a while, and I was a spoken word poet for a long time. Competed national, coached a youth team. So performing like with my voice has always been something I did. I never thought I'd make a living at it, ever.
Well, it's cool that you did it. When we first, like, yeah, when you're first hooked, especially being from the area and like, you know, loving the area for all it's good and bad, but it's just like to hear you speak and like just the dialect and the terms, it was like, oh my God, this is legit too. This isn't just somebody trying to make a buck off like the stories of it. Like this is our actual neighbor. Like we know these kind of people.
Yeah.
The irony is, like, we were taught, and Cam can back me up on this, we were taught for years to hide our accents. Like Cam and I both have degrees in communication from UVA.
Yeah, she did Appalachia we're going to have on this spring. and I know you guys have been on there.
Yeah.
She submitted her little voice to their. They did their little accent thing. So it's in there
cool.
like minute 10 or something like that.
Yeah. I know you guys can't tell, but I do have an accent.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit.
But like, this is my neutral Asheville teaching voice. If I am presenting or recording or reciting anything for professional consumption, I know I still have an accent when I sound this way. But this is the best I can neutralize my voice, which it used to be even more severe. But now sounding like I'm from back home is my default state. And my wife, who is a Cajun from Louisiana, but doesn't have a Cajun accent. She taught Spanish for 16 years, and she's a linguist, and she picks up other people's accents like a sponge. So she was just like, we were watching if you haven't watched the Wired.com videos on a tour of American accents, there are two parts of that.
Those are so good.
That sounds super interesting. I'm waiting for that.
One is 20 minutes and one is 15 minutes, and then I'm starving for part 3. Yeah, but we were talking about how people from the Delta and Creole folk, like those languages they just meld and change and whatever. And she just looks at me like, "You've ruined me. You have ruined me. I'm just in here yawling, and y'all hear you in there talking about Papa and Mama," and I lean into the accent. And like some of my friends from back home, they're like, "We tried to listen to your show. You're trying way too hard." And I'm like, "Listen, motherfucker. 2 double IPAs or a barley wine, and that's how Daddy sounds. All right."
It is. And I mean, and that's because they're used to the way we normally talk, which is, we worked hard for a long time to neutralize our accents, because I mean, we were legitimately mocked if we went outside the area. Like when I went to grad school, when I was a teaching assistant, and one of my students, little bitch from Charlottesville, yeah, decided that she was going to mock me for my accent, which I thought I was doing a pretty good job neutralizing. And I just, I'm like, "Well, I'd like to humbly remind you that I'm grading your speech."
People who don't know Cam, number one, don't realize that Cam is tiny. Like she's like, we're both kind of hobbit sized, frankly.
We are very hobbit sized.
Yeah, we're small people, big voice, small people. But Cam, also, like, you finished your master's at like what, 22?
Yes.
If that. Like Cam finished her bachelor's in like a year, like 2 years, 2.5 years, like
two and a half years. Yeah.
Graduated high school early and young, and just like, she's a force of freaking nature.
I graduated high school like a semester early and just went ahead and started college
as practically a junior.
I went to I had a bunch of like
dual enrollment.
Yeah, I had done a dual enrollment class or two, and then also had what was it? You took AP. I had credits because I took AP classes and took the AP exam, and I did AP exams, and I did well. And so I had all of that, and then and then I went to summer school because I liked what I was studying. A teacher that I liked was teaching, and so yeah, I was done like in a very short period of time.
So she went to the University of Georgia with one of the most competitive communication departments in the country, and they were not always nice to her. And I'm not saying that's like, "Oh, pity Cam." No, pity them, because
they were really disappointed when I told them that I was not going to just immediately continue on to the PhD. Once it was really strange, and it wasn't really the professors. I don't think they knew, but like a lot of the like organizing social gatherings for the department was left up to one of the other grad students, who just took a dislike to me from day one and never told me about things.
Threatened.
Yeah.
Well, I think
and so and then they and I was very quiet. I was like, first time away from home, I was like terribly isolated and depressed, and that made it much worse. And so then and then they saw my thesis and were like, oh shit, you're staying, right? You're going to do the PhD? No, I'm going home now. I might come back later. I'm going home now, though.
Then she got a master's degree, got her master's degree in health comm, moved home, decided, did that for a minute, then was like, no, I think I'm going to teach myself digital development. And then did that and became that became what she dominated the world at, or did very well at, didn't starve. And that's why when I, and number one, I know her writing. I've known it since we were both very young.
Yeah.
And when I started the project, it was just going to be me at first. And then I thought, oh, I want to talk, Cam needs to write. And she always told me that grad school burned all the creative writing out of her. So I was like, Cam needs to write. I want to get Cam to write. And then I said, well, you write an episode. And she's like, okay.
That's right.
And then the episode turned into 3, like our episodes do.
Like they tend to do.
And then that turned into like, well, let's do this together. And that turned into Deep Nerd becoming a real company and us becoming partners, and kind of like where this thing is. But like, yeah, but yeah, back home is back home, and Cam has no real reason to go back to Wise. Her mom doesn't live there anymore.
No, mom doesn't live there, and now none of my family lives there anymore. So it's other than my half sister lives in. I think they live in Norton now.
Oh.
So, but she can. I mean, there's nothing to do over there. So if she wants to hang out, she comes over here.
Yeah, my family, my sister and her 2 boys, and my mom and dad, and my dad's wife, and those folks are all still out there.
Yeah,
they're still living and kicking. Dad's siblings are kicking off one by one. But God bless them, I miss them. But yeah, so no, I still have roots back there, but I don't. It's hard because I know there are people out there that, and I'm going to get a little personal for a second, people out there who probably listen to the show and judge me because I have talked a lot of shit about Appalachia in my day. I desperately wanted to get out. I stayed till Cam got out, went to grad school, and then moved to the Tri-Cities. I stayed till, and I'm not saying this as a badge of honor or to brag, I stayed till I was 29 because I took a bullshit corporate call center job right out of college, and then moped around until I decided to be a teacher and went back to school for that and lived with my mom in the town of Appalachia, Virginia. Thank you very much. Tell me how to pronounce it. But I live there. Yeah, so I was stuck there, and I have a lot of baggage. As much as in fact, we take a lot of pride in the representation we bring for the queer community and for, not for the ace community, non-binary, for everybody that we try to represent, as best as 2 white cis people can. But at the same time, my creation of, my showcase of that is kind of in response to this really feel-good pushback against the Trump years of saying, oh, no, look, Appalachia isn't pure Trump land. Look, we have people of color, we have trans people, we have queer people, and we're here. And I'm like, yes, and how have you been treated for 300 years?
Right.
Yeah.
And
well,
yes.
That's
sorry.
With the accent too, like it's not just that, like us both being, I identify as queer, not only the accents, but you play passing, you play those things.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I know I'm going into this small convenience store in like the middle of Trump country, I'm gonna play up the accent, the beard, just look like
I'm gonna drop my voice about an octave a little bit here to make sure.
Yeah, I'm just straight country fellow like yourselves,
and I totally belong here and know what's going on.
I think I rainbow flag on. Irony, but no. But I think it's a love-hate relationship because when I grew up, my family's from the West Coast, but when I grew up, it was I don't want to have this accent because I didn't have one as strong as some people because I was learning from people that were from California. I wasn't hearing, that accent growing up. Like you, where your family's from.
Yeah, we're from,
from
Lincolnton, from the foothills.
Oh, Lincoln, not Lincolnton.
Lincoln.
Lincolnton. Almost as much fun to say as Rutherfordton.
Yeah, but
Rutherfordton.
And that's the thing is like you downplay it and then you talk a lot of shit because it's like, like fuck this place, I don't want to be here. And it's like until recently, I personally found, pride in it, and that was with like between working with witchcraft and stuff, and trying to be more in tune with nature on that kind of path. And then it's like you fall in love with the area, but you still have that hatred for like what can come out of it. I mean, so for me, it's a love-hate relationship. Like, I mean, I love it and I love being in it. And it's like, it's sad to see what the region is affected by with poverty and the brainwashing with that right-wing bullshit. And it's like, but at the same time, it's like, I know that I'm still, as much as I love it and want to support it, like, that's a thing with the one we found and like some others, and like Appalachia has mentioned it, like there's nothing where we want to keep these people here, like the people of color,
the brilliant minds,
right?
Oh yeah.
And so I feel like we had talked about on the Cursed episode too, even with witchcraft, there's like this draw to like this region's magic, and like right now, and I feel like it's a beautiful place. There's so much creativity and art and wonderful stuff that comes out of it, and it's been so shadowed on purpose, where even the own people want to get out and they feel guilt and shame for being that. And so when I do my voices, when I get a little bit too much, or we're talking about like, oh, you're from Burke County, it's like, I'm not mocking you per se, but it's like, that's the dialect that like I've, and yes, it's a little exaggerated, but that's what you've tried to pound out of yourself, like get rid of.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of a rough thing because it's still not a very tolerant, it is in some places. I mean, but
yeah, I mean, Asheville is, if you're a white lesbian or a white dude with dreads, Asheville's a great place to be.
Yeah.
If you're a trans person of color, you might find a little bit tougher road to hoe here. Right. Because Asheville has this reputation of being like this queer oasis, or this big, and it is. The best thing I can say about my city, tourist hellscape that it is that kindness is common sense here. It is a very queer city. It is a very white city. White, miracle whip, white dreadlock. People, I think Todd Barry said when he played here, white people with dreadlocks, white people without dreadlocks living together in racial harmony. That's pretty much, I steal that joke from him all the time. That's Asheville. But that's Asheville. Nothing a craft beer can't fix, nothing craft beers and $15 barbecue can't make right in an afternoon.
And I always say, like, Asheville to me feels like if Portland was a little mountain town, like,
and didn't do meth or didn't do heroin.
Right.
Because we do meth. They do meth.
Yeah, meth, yes. But yes, lots of white people.
Feeling real good about themselves.
I mean, you're wearing your burial shirt. We were just talking about burial.
I just shipped a buddy of mine a burial beer. He'd never received beer via UPS, labeled as a package of books and orthotics. Maryland doesn't take kindly to it, but I sent him some burial. Burial is magnificent. I mean, there are great things about the city. Please, just like Appalachia, I hold my city. I try to I judge my city as I would.
Just live there long enough to develop an intense hatred of tourists.
Yeah, tourist syndrome, where you just scream profanities as soon as you leave the house because you see tourists and you just want them. But right now, especially during the pandemic, get the fuck out of my city. Actually, Buncombe County's rates have not been terrible. Henderson County, where I literally live 5 miles over the border into the next county, and the taxes go way much lower. But most of our numbers have been driven by the fact that where we're out here in rural Western North Carolina, it's a very high concentration of nursing homes and elder care facilities. Like, there are ones that look like massive ski lodge developments, and they're all elder care facilities, and that's why the numbers are what they are. But it's still we still got to fix that. But anyway, so like it's a complicated relationship with back home. Asheville is Appalachia. Asheville is Appalachia and isn't Appalachia in the same token. Okay. Geographically, yes. Spiritually,
not so much.
It just depends. It really just depends.
It's like I think it took Steve a really long time to develop an appreciation of the region, because of the things we've talked about. There is racism and homophobia and transphobia here, and also just like, I mean, sure, we're white and cis, but we were the weird kids, and we were not well treated in our hometown. That's why my bio says that you can confirm the fact that I've been fixated on the occult and the supernatural most of my life, and I've been called the devil worshiper enough times to prove that. And and just trust us, when we finally do the season that's set in the satanic panic, it's gonna be fun.
So excited. But yeah, I mean, that's just, I mean, you know, it's like, okay, well, you know, any kind of witchcraft interest in it or practicing, having all these things, like, you know, for me, it is easier because I can, you know, I can pretend like I'm not those things. I can pass, as it were. But, you know, it's still like you want to see the region do well, even though, you know, it's been exploited like its entire, you know, from its inception. And I think that's part of the problem too, with that love-hate, like learning to find that appreciation for it and that value in it. Because again, it was done on purpose to not like the region, you know, I mean, to
that
judge
people
it.
devalue themselves. Number
Right.
one, taught to not like ourselves. We're taught not to like our culture.
We're just hillbillies that don't know no better.
We're not represented well.
Right.
Our intelligence is always questioned.
Right.
So much that we start to do that to ourselves, which is really limiting.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people from here that could do that and say that same thing, where it's like, I love this region, but at the same time, it's like,
if it weren't for the people in it.
If you love something, you're critical of it. You know what I mean? Like, you can't, it's not to be like one of the nationalists of like Appalachia, where it's like, ain't nothing wrong here. No, there's a very great deal wrong here. But, you know, I think what I kept saying to Cam, I think y'all's show really helps show positivity and interest in that region, or our region, I should say. But yes, I think you're one of the cogs in the wheels of trying to get that, like, that change, and to like show like what comes out of here, because we have some paranormal friends, which we should talk about some too. But we have like, I think she's in Washington. One of them was like, oh my gosh, I'm so interested in like the Jake Richards book and like backwoods witchcraft, and like, oh, that podcast sounds great. And it's like, yeah, like our magic's awesome here, and there's a lot to love about being from here. So it's cool to, you know, to hear people talk about it in like a interest, and like, oh my gosh, instead of the, well, don't, you know,
in a
what we've always heard.
In a way that's not to neutralize, not to patronize, not to cartoonize or characterize, just a true appreciation for the absolute value of what's here.
Yeah, no, this is, and I will say, my love and hate and all the things that I feel about it are as complicated. Is recently the anniversary of my mama's passing, my mom's mom, who raised me from the time I was 3, because my dad was injured very badly in a mechanic accident on a strip mine. He was electrocuted really badly, and that's a whole other story. But my grandma raised me for a long time, and she is the only person in this world I will ever believe unconditionally loved me. And good people have loved me, and good people love me. But I will never maybe I won't allow myself to feel that, but where I can't. But she was an angry, conflicted, problematic as fuck abuse survivor who came from a very broken, very toxic home. And she taught me how to love through sacrifice, and through that you don't hide how you feel, because if you bury it down, you ain't gonna do nothing but make yourself sick. And that's why I'm loud, because she was loud in certain ways. And she is the woman who taught me how to love when I think she probably herself felt very little love in a lot of ways, until she had grandkids, of which I was the first and the best. When I spoke at her funeral, she had just found this church community in the last couple of years before she died. And I just want to remind, you know, my cousins who are here and the church, I was here first. And that was one of the first things I said when I spoke at her funeral. But she was a complicated person, and that place did complicated things to her. And it did complicated things to all of us. And I don't care who you are. I don't care who your family is. I don't care where your bloodline runs to. I don't care what book you wrote, what banjo you played, what records you made, what Bible you signed, what church you started, how many times Ralph Stanley sued your dad. Once. You know, it's a true story, different time. You know, I don't care who you are. There's all mountain folks are mountain royalty. and nobody gets to tell us how much we get to love or hate our home. If you don't like it, don't listen to my podcast. People seem to like it, so again, I just gave a thumbs up on a podcast. I don't know what that's about, but Zoom, get the bonus Zoom footage. But yeah, so like we love Appalachia. We are of Appalachia. Anybody wants to dispute that, we can step outside, for I will not fight you, because I'm still getting in shape. Give me another 8 years and I'll be dead, but that's fine. I will haunt you as a revenant, and then you can't beat me, because I will kill your entire family with my tooth. I'll have one tooth.
Then I'll just be a Appalachian Hank.
I'll be a Hank.
You'll just be a Hank.
You'll be a Hank. Yeah, but yeah. So yes, we thank you everybody that supported the show and given us $1, or just listens and follows us on social media. We have no idea in some ways how popular we are, and I don't say that like, oh shucks, because we don't know. Like until like we talk to somebody,
it's hard to tell.
And then we talk to somebody. They're like, oh, you want to work with us? Like, we really can't afford you, and we're like, what do you mean? And they tell us like, what? I'm like, oh no, honey, you can't. Like, not in a bad way, not like we're fancy, but it's just like, oh gosh, like what? Can we give you $1? Like, can we? Like, I got a couple extra, and I got, but like it was just So it's just like it's one of those things where like it's still so weird that I get up in the morning, eat something, and then I come in here and I get to make like there's that meme on Facebook, describe what you do for a living very badly. I say I make monster noises in the guest room.
Nice.
That's what I do for a living. And Cam kills people with religion. That's kind of what we do for a living.
Well, so what's interesting to me is how this ties, and I can see more of like where your idea came from, where it's like, well, why is this land seemingly cursed? Why is, all this? So I can see kind of like those wheels turn when you say it feels like nobody was supposed to be here. And it goes down to what's like the very first intro, or where it's like, oh, it gets darker here earlier because well
that's from the Daryl Scott song. Well, that's from an old saying. The sun comes up about 10 in the morning and the sun goes down about 3 in the day.
I think you do a good job at painting the picture and writing. I thought it was interesting that Cam was like, no, witchcraft was never really like going to be a main theme of it till we started writing it. And,
we really got into it.
Yeah.
I'm so glad it is.
Because I thought it was so weird how I was like, oh, there's got to be, when I talked to Steve on Instagram, I was like, there's got to be witches involved with this, or they're just really good at their homework, because like I could tell he's like, oh yeah, not me. He was
correct. Good guess.
It's a matter of we want everything to be as authentic as it can, which is why I find it so funny people love the Witch Queen's voice, because it's like the worst accent I can do, and like so we just try to make up for that with like place names or family names. So we get so many emails of people who I never thought I'd hear the name Bledsoe used in fiction, or Mullins, and I got somebody messaged us about the Valentine's Day special, no spoilers, and they're like, finally the Mullinses are on, we got representation, and and I'm like, that's what happens when your family shows up on Old Gods.
Kill them all. Sorry.
Yeah, the Gibson family at the beginning of season 2, that's Cam's partner's last name.
Yep.
So I'm so sorry, Brian, that I murdered your family.
Sorry.
Well,
what an honor to be murdered on Old Gods.
Right.
Yeah, well, that's just kind of and that's the perk that we need to add on Patreon. There's a upper level perk that you get to name a character with our approval, and I think we need to add a disclaimer that we get to decide how that character dies, because that character is going to die.
Yeah, it's like the Game of Thrones thing. Like, don't get attached.
Do not get attached to anyone.
Well, so like because
except the dog, you can get attached to.
You can get attached to Sam. Sam will pass away.
To Sam all day. That's fine.
If Sam passes away, it's of old age, and he was happy and full of squirrel the whole time, and nobody hurt.
You didn't pull the horror trick of
quietly in his sleep in his favorite sunny spot on the porch. Okay, that's how Sam's gonna go. Don't worry. It's fine.
You didn't.
And that's not for a long time.
I'm gonna
introduce for a long time.
The sweet animal just to kill it kind of thing. That horror, horror movies.
Yeah, I can't. That's not a thing. Like I'm such a constant user of does the dog die? It's like, oh shit, there's a cat in this. Oh, no, there's a dog. Nope, stop, pause.
It's going
And I will stop watching immediately. It's like, nope.
And you'll see like 100 people get eviscerated, and it's like, oh my god, did that dog just get shot? I can't. This is awful.
I can't watch this. We have to stop this now.
I will say in the animal sacrifice sequence that is in the sacrifice, Cam does mention that an old dog is sent for. That old dog never showed up. That's what I'm saying.
Old dog never showed up, y'all.
That owner said,
I mean, for those who wonder, that old dog never showed up.
Yeah, and when Cletus went to his house and his dog wasn't there, wasn't because the dog was dead. That dog knew what the F was up, and he got the hell out. And he got in the truck with somebody, and that dog is living in Breathitt County now and is doing just fine. And, just fine. Now the cows and the farm animals.
Sorry.
Yeah,
they were food anyway. Sorry. But we will. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I said they had it coming anyway. The cow.
Oh, so, but we have the same pledge that Magnus does. The Magnus Archive says, well, there'll never be a sexual assault scene.
Nope.
Which is not to say sexual assault doesn't exist in our world. It does. We have women who are survivors. I mean, our most popular women characters are sex workers or have sex work in their past. That's a reality. That will be mentioned past, it's part of, but I don't ever want to define a woman. I'm not a woman, in case you don't notice. Bi cis man. That's what you got right here. And I think like I'm getting to the point now to where with the glasses and the hair, I just radiate bisexual podcast host. Like wherever I go, it's just like it's kind of like the spirit of bisexual Ira Glass just radiates off of me. So like I gotta like not shave and let this get scraggly before I go try to like pass it in a convenience store. But we'll never run a sexual assault scene for that kind of trigger. And the dog and the cat always live. Those are our
promise to you.
Our promise to everybody. Like I cannot, like I said, I will never soft shoe the atrocities that happen anywhere, but I don't have to like peel them back.
We are not going to describe this in living detail.
You don't have to get entertainment.
With the current storyline that I'm writing involves domestic violence, but I'm not going to give you the play-by-play. That's not, that is not going to happen because nobody needs that.
Yeah, I think Door Under the Floor on Patreon, the ending of that is the most like that's true still supernatural violence because Lavinia is who Lavinia is.
Yes.
But that's the most visceral like person being killed.
Yeah.
That's not just been like burning bodies or just figured reanimated things. Like,
that is the most like, slasher flick we've gone on the show.
Carol Ann's death in season 1. That was pretty rough too. That's a character you want to talk about like a visitation of somebody that was never alive. I did not intend to fridge Carol Ann, but like when I wrote the scene of the Avery homestead in season 1 of Sarah coming home and her daddy's been killed in the mines, her mama's hanging from a tree and looks like she's gone to go find him, and I wanted to compassionately address what I thought at the time when I wrote. I wanted to compassionately address like grief and suicide and talk about that as gently as I can, and even have this child kind of understand that as best their brain can, because Sarah is an exceptional child as the story has borne out. But then like I went to write the finale of Sarah's act, and there's even still a graphic of it on Instagram, a sign that says "You are now leaving Barlow." And that episode, and it's called The Last Avery Girl, and that episode never got produced because as I was sitting trying to write it, I'm like, something's just not, something's keeping me. And basically I'm like, and I'm just going back to my notes and I'm like, Carol Ann, like, what do we know about Carol Ann? Like, I don't want to fridge somebody. I don't want to just like have her, but my writer brain is like, no, it's cosmic horror. There's fallout in cosmic horror. There's horrible depression that leads to death, that leads to this, and it's cosmic horror, and it's cold, and you will do this. Meanwhile, there's basically this woman standing on my desk going like, I had a daughter, and I loved her, and I would not leave her. And my husband was a good man, and that land is all we had, and it wasn't much of nothing. And then next thing I knew, I'm like, yes, ma'am. And I was writing Carol, and then the Walker family was born. I'm like, okay, I was stuck writing, so I'm like, I'm just going to freestyle, record some stuff. Some usually that stuff doesn't make it in, but I knew I wanted to write about a town called Tourniquet, West Virginia, That place is an invention of mine that's based on a couple of places. But I wanted to write about a place that was designed to stop the bleeding. And I'm like, cool, I'm going to make her mother a sex worker and a madam. And like this, I'm going to have her descended from a woman who made her the kind of Appalachian badass that we never knew she was. And I literally just freestyled. I'm like, the town of Tourniquet, West Virginia, Sheila Walker established such and such. And just the name, I did not know about the Walker sisters of West Virginia. I will claim Appalachian history ignorance. They're fantastic women with an incredible history. I wish my characters were based on them or named after them. They're not. And I spun this yarn of this backstory for Carol Ann. And then I worked in two sisters who helped her deliver the baby, and the curse that eventually does what it does, the protective wards that do what they do that play out that episode. And next thing I know, I had those two sisters show up at the end of the episode. Are you ready to go home? And next thing I know, I have an entire franchise of people who are begging for these two women that I created as just like these mystery aunts who return. I seriously meant for them to show up and then vanish and make people want stories, and I'll buy time. I'll write about them.
Right.
No, there was no waiting. There was no people wanted walkers and they wanted walkers
now.
So that's where
this is a very in-depth, just give me a second to get this all out, because it's not like I just made this up.
It sounds like you are channeling people.
Exactly.
Maybe not people that existed, but you're channeling spirits of some kind. It definitely seems like.
Oh, I know all 7 Walker sisters' names. Cam named Dougie, who y'all met in season 2. And I plugged Dougie in when I made the chart. I'm like, well, I'll put placeholder names. No, I know their names. One of them was almost the name I used for Floyd to have a little sister in season 1. In season 2. When Floyd met Cowboy, he originally brought his younger sister down with him, who was mean to Cowboy at first, and then eventually came around. And then I realized I wasn't doing anything with her, like she was just there. And her name was Priscilla Rose. And I knew that name belonged somewhere. So when I started filling out this Walker family tree chart, Priscilla Rose Walker fell in with one of the older girls. We may not ever hear her story. We might not ever meet her. She might be gone for all we know right now. But I know who she was. I know who her daddy was too. I don't know if he's even special or not, but
I think
I just have chills thinking about channeling these people that existed in some way. And even if they didn't, they do now.
Well, that's what I think is and I kind of mentioned that to Cam. I was like, do you ever feel like with the, how well it took off and the different stories that your spirits of place are channeling through you or moving through you? And she's like, not the monsters, but maybe, maybe the good spirits, but not the monsters. And it's it's just weird to have, to feel like this inspiration.
As the voice of Miss Lavinia. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then to think maybe something is a little bit, what'd you say? Channeling, channeling the, maybe not an actual person, but yeah.
There are things that come through that just come through so naturally. I know what Cletus Garvin looks like, and I didn't write him.
Just saying.
Cam pulled him out of an amalgamation of people that she encountered secondarily through my life, because Cam didn't grow up in church. I did. And when we went out, when we were younger, she came to church with me a bunch, and she saw those older men, and she saw and we knew those old men, and we knew who they were. And his name actually comes from two old, not based on it all. There were, as far as I know, two good old dudes, but one's name was Cletus and the other's name was Garvin. No, sorry, Darvin was his name. And I changed it so it wouldn't be these two deacons who always sat their families were related, so they sat in the same part of the church or whatever. They're both nice dudes, but those names just stuck. But Cam pulled that character from the head of Zeus, full formed apparition with and all his kids. Some of his kids are named after Cam's damn family.
I've often a good portion of my family.
Well, all the boys from Death Island, all the boys from Baker's Gap are my friends. I'm one of those boys.
You're hold up, that felt really personal. No, it was personal.
Oh no, Death Island is very. Floyd and Cowboy are completely invented characters. Floyd and Cowboy are completely invented characters. They were written for the show. There's no Floyd. I never knew a Floyd. I never knew a stand-in for Floyd. Archie Stallard, however, I FaceTime with the other day, but his name's not Archie. Curtis Kilgore, I FaceTime with him a while back. Actually, he stopped by on his way back, going back to Wise from Maggie Valley on a motorcycle trip a while back. Dallas Shepard and Shane Shepard. I've got a cousin named David, and my name is Steve. And those two characters are, Dave called that one perfectly when he heard the show. He's like, it's like you took some of you and mixed it up with some of me and vice versa. and created those characters. But scrawny little Shane raised by his grandparents. That's me. I also gave him kind of sort of the least to say, even though he was kind of a big loudmouth asshole. I didn't want to like make it all about him because it was about Floyd and Cowboy. But Death Island was a real place. It was a little peninsula that stuck out in the middle of Bear Creek Reservoir, Wise Lake. When the water was high, it surrounded on three sides. There was one little strip of land that connected it. It's where we sword fought. It's where we shot 22s. It's where we, just went when we needed to go somewhere to get out of the house and we weren't driving because we weren't old enough. It's underwater now, from what I understand, because they've raised the dam.
Oh wow!
But it was somebody said that part of the season 2 feels like an Appalachian Stand By Me, and that's high praise.
Yeah,
it is.
The body is such a good.
So first off, I felt that shit too. But when we first started listening, and then you start talking about how you don't really have these like gory imagery, I was like, that's it. And I described listening to it like kind of similar to that, like the Stephen King style of it's terrifying. It's like it gives you goosebumps, but you never really like do that. It's like it's what you build. That's like, I mean, I remember when, and I can't think of the name, but is it, whose dad was it? When he's like basically melting, when she, you know what I mean? And
Sarah's dad in season 1.
I was going to say Sarah, and I was like, I'm going to sound, because I'm the worst at remembering names from like, that's why I
have a lot of names.
Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, trivia bullshit. But like just the way it was described, it's like, it didn't even have to be gory, but it's like, the way you like present it, it just, I don't know,
it's deeply unsettling.
Yeah,
it's unnatural. It doesn't follow any of the rules of nature.
But that felt very like Stephen King-esque, where it's like, it's just however the way you word it and how you guys write stuff, it's terrifying and it's scary and unsettling without being cheap, and without it slowly builds this like, and then you stop and you're like, oh, I have full body chills just from that picture you put in my head. And it was very subtle. Like it wasn't very like in your face gory, like, and then her arms were cut off, her hands were cut off, and that kind of bullshit.
Yeah. Cam stands Stephen King a lot more than I do, and I'm a King fan, but for my money, when King isn't writing horror, it's when King is writing Stand By Me, The Green Mile, the Dark Tower series up through book 4.
At
Pupil, The Running Man, or The Long Walk, I guess it's actually called, The Body. When Stephen King,
At Pupil is arguably horror. But it's exactly. But like he's not writing schlock there. He's writing psychological. Yeah.
You have a pet Nazi, like that kind of, when he writes that kind of stuff, like Dreamcatcher does nothing for me. It I think walks the best line of like small town horror, huge supernatural.
It really
entity.
does. I mean, it combines some of the best elements of Stand By Me.
Yeah.
He does such a good job describing that friendship.
Mm-hmm. The one that's for me, but like one of my favorites is Pet Cemetery, but it's all those little things in it.
Yeah.
And I know that's horror, but it's the little things of like, it's not about the kid dying and coming back. It's not about the cat. Spoiler alert.
No, Pet Cemetery is a book about grief.
Yeah,
that is entirely what Pet Cemetery is about, and that's the horror of it. It's
about what would
you do. Really good book.
You know you would go do it. You know you would.
Yeah, you would.
So, do you have any personal paranormal experiences that either are going to make it in? Well, I guess in general, have you had any? Before I ask if any are going to like inspire the show or have done anything.
You go first.
Sensitive, right?
I mean, I don't think they're going to make it into the show, probably. But I will tell you, for about a year. No, it was totally a year. From October of 2018 to October of 2019, I lived in this townhouse, and it was beautiful, like spacious, like gorgeous hardwood floors, like high ceilings. Like I really loved it. But when I moved in, one of my witch friends comes over, and we're blessing the house and everything. And she's a little more sensitive than me, and she was telling me about, there's some of the ghosts that are there. She's like, yeah, but they're fine. They're pretty harmless. And I'm not like one of those people who's like, oh boy, we better call the exorcist. No, I'm like, hey, if you don't bother me, I ain't gonna bother you. It's fine. But it was this house was haunted, and so one of the ghosts was a dog. And
dog's like running around in here now, like that you're.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I was on the phone one night with one of my friends, and I had been playing playing records, and you sit there and you're flipping them. And so when he called, and I paused everything, and so I was just kind of laying in the floor next to the turntable talking to him on the phone, and I keep hearing tap 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 tap, and I was kind of like, God, Loki, would you just lie down? And I turn and I look over my shoulder at him, and Loki's lying on his bed asleep. Ooh. Tap jingle tap jingle tap jingle is not my dog.
It's somebody's.
Yeah, and none of the neighbors had a dog on either side of me. So
where it's like, oh my God, would you stop? And it's like, wait.
Oh, wait.
1, 2, 3. Oh, they're all in here. Okay, then what's doing that in there?
All right, so that was, that's the first thing. And then when Brian and I started dating, he's very sensitive to spirits, always has been. And so they talked to him. One of them spoke to him and said hello to him in the garage one night when he was taking the dog outside, and that was fine. That was all good. And then we disturbed something.
Like from across, and then you what?
And then we disturbed something.
Uh-oh.
There was this Saturday afternoon. I was in the bathroom getting ready and everything. So I think we were going to head over to Asheville. Go to a couple of breweries, whatever. And I kept thinking I smelled smoke. And so we start, we're freaking out, thinking something's on fire. It was a real hot day. And we're looking downstairs. We're looking downstairs in the kitchen. We go down to the garage. We cannot find anything. Look outside. Nothing's burning outside. And finally, we go back upstairs and look up, and we're like, oh shit, we need to check the attic. Now, we'd never been up to the attic. Didn't need the storage space. Had never gone up there. Never really thought about it. When we blessed the house, we didn't really pay attention. Didn't think about it. So Brian goes up and looks in the attic, and there's nothing there. There's still no smoke, nothing. We're like, oh, whatever. And after that, whatever is in the attic is very unhappy with him and starts harassing him. Me to a lesser extent, but he can't sleep. He's never been one to have anxiety, but he's just like skin crawly anxious at night, can't sleep. And it would do this thing, and it did this to both of us. It would wait until you're just about to fall asleep and laugh in your ear. Ugh. And so this was in the summer, and this went on, a couple months, and it was getting to be about time to renew that lease. And we're like, nope, let's look for another place. Time to go. Bye-bye.
I love being woken up to laughter when I'm,
Oh yeah, and like a creepy cackle kind of laughter too. It was not fun.
You can't go to sleep after that shit.
No, you can't go to sleep after that shit at all.
Yeah, I got the play-by-play of all that as it was going on.
You did.
So I take it you moved out and never looked back and didn't have the problem anymore?
Yep.
It had to be.
Well, I mean, I won't say there's been nothing here, but it's benign, totally benign, like turning electronics on and off, kind of regular stuff. No big deal.
I ain't paying the power bill. Turn that shit off.
Right.
What about you, Steve? You have any?
Yeah, I've got a few. My family would never admit to like sensitivity or anything running in it because we're very Free Will Baptist.
Oh yeah,
but like I've always again been fascinated with the occult or whatever, but I always consider myself the Bible boy. I was the guy you wanted there at the seance with the Bible ready to rebuke whatever it was that might be coming through the mirror glass there or whatever. I've got there's some stories from that, but some of those are a little like I could take them apart myself, even though I was there. But I'm the one example that when I thought things were I realized things were in my family. Ironically, weirdly, my dad's side, which is the very religious side. There's an apple house that's in our family by marriage, and it's still. If you Google Cobra Mountain Apple House, you can see pictures of it on Facebook. My dad's there making apple butter with his brother, whose late wife owned it, and her family owned it before that, and they owned the orchards. And there was, this is a prelude to something else. I'm gonna keep this super short. Once a season we'd go out and they'd boil apples, we make apple butter, whatever they do to apples. Please, the apple butter people don't come for me. We would make apple butter and drink cider, and it was a whole family gathering. You'll see pictures. You can see pictures of that of my family without me on the Facebook. And the building is old, like it is like Southwest Virginia old, and
older than bones. No.
Yeah, we were. Shut up. that shit's been posted on our Facebook group so much. I want to love y'all, family, in the fellowship hall, but please don't.
Yeah, we love y'all.
But anyway, so we're all in the Apple House and sitting around, and my cousin Brian, who is now in his 30s, but at the time was probably like 4 or 5, and he was a smart kid. And he was homeschooled and still turned out to be a smart kid. God bless my Aunt Susie. Let her rest. He, out of nowhere, we're all just talking, and I'm probably like 13, 14. And he's like, Mommy, who said John Quincy Adams? And we're like, how the fuck does a 4-year-old know who John Quincy Adams is? I was like, Bronny, what are you talking about? He's like, somebody said John Quincy Adams. He said Quincy, like that. And we're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. He's like, okay. And he went back to playing whatever. My Aunt Pammy got into researching the deeds, and the man who owned the Apple House before it was bought into her family was John Mackenzie Adams.
That's crazy.
So that's one little thing. That was when I was first like, I'm not the only one that's had stuff. I bet, and I'd be curious to know if Brian, I would never talk to him about it because it's not his thing. His wife, he would be freaked out probably, but his wife's lovely. He's lovely too. But anyway, I taught, so my most recent experience a couple of years ago, I taught at Asheville High School here in Asheville, North Carolina. I taught for the School of Inquiry. I taught for the School of Inquiry and Life Sciences, which is a magnet type program in the basement. Taught English for them, and I coached spoken word with the slam team there for a while. I was there for about 6 years, and that high school was designed it was originally the black high school for the city, and Asheville City Schools, which does not need to exist. Buncombe County Schools could run the whole thing, but Asheville City Schools exists kind of as a legacy school system for the black residents of Asheville, and we serve more black students than the rest of Buncombe County combined. And this story doesn't have a racial overtone. Just being clear of that the school has history. And the school's like creeping up on 100 years old. The building is. And it's beautiful. It looks like a castle on the outside. If you've never seen Asheville High School, Google Asheville High School. It looks like Hogwarts maybe with some of the transphobia, but with a little bit less. But it looks like a freaking castle. Yeah. The auditorium, now the arts theater only seats about 300 or 400 people, and it's a black box stage, and it's meant for active plays. The auditorium has a balcony and seats the whole 1,500, 2,000 people that can go to that high school, and is where all the musicals and that kind of stuff go on. So for spoken word, most of the time we were in the arts theater, but for after school, because nobody ever booked the auditorium for after school stuff because they didn't need a space that big, we would do it in there just because there was no other place to practice. And I hadn't spent a lot of time in the auditorium, even though I'd been teaching there for 3 or 4 years. And when I did, my kids were always seated back under the balcony. like not in the view looking down, not in the orchestra, but kind of back. That's just where ninth graders ended up, sucky seats, you know. So we were doing a workshop, and we're like, cool, let's all get on stage. We'll do some warm-up activities, and we'll do whatever. And then I get my 10 or 12 kids up there with my other co-teacher, Heidi, and some other people, and we're hanging out. And I'm like, okay, cool. Whether the weather is hot, I'm taking them through, like, you know, warm-up exercises. And something is just looking at me. And it's not a good feeling. It's not like, oh, a former student's here to surprise me, you know, or something. And I kind of turn and look up at the balcony, and it wasn't a physical like light, but it was like suddenly someone just like put like a freaking cop mag light like right in my face, like a blind. I could not like face that direction. Like there was just this hostile, like, we see you, no, we see you. And I literally kept directing, like running workshops from like pacing back around, like out of the view of the balcony. And when I left stage and handled the activity to someone else, I went like around the outside of the building and came back in and I didn't feel anything. The second I stepped in the view of that balcony, it was just like this wave of like, nope, not you. Not you, you're nope. And whenever I monitored assemblies or we had programs, I would always stick to the walking the rows back under the balcony. So after a couple, 3 years of this, I just decided, you know what? It was a year I lost my room during my planning period. I had to let a floating teacher use my classroom. I'm like, I'm going to go up there. In the middle of the day, nothing spooky. Like there's all kinds of life energy in here. I'm going to go, and I'm just going to go. Do it. I'm just going to go do it. Lights are on in there. You know, band is we'll be in there practicing for Christmas rehearsal, for Christmas concert or something later. I know that's not a dead space right now. I know that like the living are trampling all over it, you know, whatever. The balcony had been closed for renovations for a long time, for a year or so while they fixed some stuff, because they'd been leasing it out to a church. You have those pop-up churches you see like the windsock signs for. There's a church called Elevation that was using the auditorium, and they opened the balcony because they needed the overflow. So I'm like, cool, I'm gonna go check it out. So I walked into the balcony, and I was fine at first walking through the door. I'm like, all right, okay, this is fine. This is all right, you know, whatever. And then the second I kind of stepped away from the door into the center of the balcony, first of all, my attention was immediately drawn to the back left corner, like a magnet. And all that was back there was what looked like like electrical equipment, like where like a circuit board would be mounted, like, you know, something, you know how schools have the industrial walls that are all padlocked up, you know, whatever. It was modern. It wasn't even like old school. And then there wasn't anything to be back there. But whatever it was that didn't want me in that auditorium was there. So I'm like, and I was just full of myself that day, because I tend to have a pretty good relationship with these feelings. And when I've encountered things, I've been able to be like, cool, you go your way, I go mine, or this is mine. This is my space. You know, you can have yours, but I'm peeing on these trees. This is me.
I got my big boy britches on today. I'm gonna walk into that corner.
Yeah, I was born a prince of hell. All right, step back, you know. And so like I'm like, fuck it, I'm going over here. I'm going to see what it is. I took 2 steps into the aisleway toward that left corner, and I couldn't lift my legs. Like my quads just locked. One of my knees seized backwards. And I thought I'd torn something. I thought like, oh great, Steve, you've come up here and you've like managed to, your old man knees have finally like given out. And
you
like,
get it now, you old son of a bitch.
Yeah. And then I just realized, my legs were tightening and my hips were locking up. And I'm like, and I'm trying to like take a step forward, and my body's just like, nope. And I'm looking back at this area, and I'm like, there's nothing back there. I'm looking for like a broken seat, maybe some old exposed wood, like something that's like some marker of something, you know, some sign that something old is here or has been, but everything's been built over, everything's been renovated. But whatever it was, I wasn't. And I finally, I literally out loud said, okay. And I stepped backwards and almost fell because my body released like almost immediately. And I never went back in that balcony again. I have a picture of it on my Facebook. I'll send it to you on Instagram, of the doors. Because the way the school is, there's the basement, which is where my school was. It's the building is like this big Triforce. It's not a conductor of supernatural activity at all, just by architectural shape. No, it's not. Google Asheville High School. And it was on CNN for a haunting. If you go on YouTube and search for Asheville High School ghost, you will see, and I'm going to say this, ghost. You will see the shape of a child, a small child standing in you will see a cloud, you will see a mist that takes the form of a small child clearly silhouetted in a elevator door at 2 a.m. inside of Asheville High School. It's on YouTube. It's on YouTube. Google Asheville High Ghost, because the local news and CNN, somebody else did a story about it.
You can get us in there?
No, not anymore. If this had been last year, and a principal ago, yes, I would have had a key. But like that guy's gone. But
I thought we told you were gonna come back here, Steve.
Yeah, but but you can just look at the doors, and so the basement doesn't have access to the auditorium. It's under everything. The main steps you go up to Asheville High, when you look at the pictures, it's like a castle. The main steps to go up to the main doors put you on the second floor, which is where the entrance to the auditorium is. The entrance to the balcony is on the third floor of classrooms. So the school is a rotunda in the middle that goes up all the way through, and then it has 3 branching arms off of each of those. And then in the corner of one of those is the door to the auditorium's balcony. And no matter what time of day it is, and it's bare glass, but just the way the light falls and the way the overhang is, it's always dark. It's always, I'll send you a picture. It's all middle of the day, 3 o'clock after I just finished my last class. It is pitch black through that class. And in fact, I think you have to have a key that, like, I don't even know if they're, I may be remembering wrong. At one point, they didn't have the outward handles on those. You had to have like a T key that you pull and turn, and then you could pull the door open for the balcony when they were under renovation. I think the picture I have, the door handles are on. I could be wrong about that. But whatever it was up there did not want me there. I don't have any backstory. There was a girl who haunted the hallway I taught on, because apparently the 2 rooms that got turned into a science lab and 2 other classrooms used to be a recital hall for music. And our clocks would stop, would just pop off the wall. Lights would go on and off. Even if you turned the motion sensors off, it'd get turned back on. Like I would turn them off while all my 9th graders are seated. And I named her Agnes. I don't even know her real name. I would just be like, Agnes, and stuff would go back to the way it was. Like lights would come back on, or the flicker would whatever. But like, she was friendly, and I knew it was a she. The energy was definitely feminine, and she was playful. And my science buddy, there was a bathroom in between us, and he said like my clock would stop, his clock would fly off the wall. And it was just her passing through, we would say, and like she was kind of, so there's all kinds of stuff in Asheville. And it wouldn't surprise me if I'm sorry.
Did you have anybody else have experiences on the balcony? Did you find out? I know you said you don't have a backstory, but I didn't know if it was like specifically you, or.
Well, here's the thing. The video you can watch on YouTube where you see a mist take the form of a child, is where that mist comes from, is the main entrance of the auditorium.
Oh, okay.
So the rotunda, which looks occult as fuck because it's a 7-sided, I think it's 7-sided, and then there's a 1930s light fixture hanging down in the middle. I mean, it looks like a ritual area.
They're like, you know what? Just put a small demon in here.
Yeah, like I don't know what's up there. I don't need to know what's up there. Whatever it is not something that's identifiable to me, and I'm okay with that. Whatever it sees in me that it doesn't want, I don't have a conflict with it as far as I know, or I didn't while I was there. I didn't feel like there was some secret I was supposed to uncover or any. That's the thing people don't understand about sensitivity sometimes. It's not always like an invitation to a quest. It's not like I'm going to go find grandma's bones. Like
it's not a side quest.
You're not a bloodhound.
Yeah, like I have a friend who tells a story of her family staying at this Airbnb in Italy when her dad's the officer's housing where her dad was stationed over there was being renovated, and this old woman kept coming in her room and shaking her awake, asking her if she had seen her boys. And the last time it happened, she woke up with scratches all down her from like hips to thighs, and she was like 10 years old. And then like they left. They like left and went and got like a modern hotel.
I'm just renting. Yeah. I'm just here for the weekend. No, I'm not going to help solve a mystery. Not today.
Yeah, but then several years after that, her dad was in Italy when they'd had like a minor earthquake, and this little town had been like all kinds of historic buildings had been thrown off their foundations and had collapsed. And he was looking for this one restaurant he'd eaten at that he wanted to see if it was still there. And he saw the bed and breakfast they'd stayed in, and it was marked in blue. I think it was blue tape, which over there meant like an archaeological dig. And he went and he asked, he's like, hey, what happened? He's like, well, the earthquake happened. He's like, no. He's like, what? Did they find something like historical here? He's like, oh yeah. It's like, turns out this place was like smuggling Jews out during World War II. And they found a mother and her 2 sons like buried under a sub basement that had collapsed in the, under this place. So like that. And that's her dad coming back telling that story. I have no verification. I can't show you any stuff if that's true, but like that's a family story from a friend of mine up in DC. Her dad was a colonel in the Air Force, and she was like born in Italy, lived in Germany most of her life. So, and she's goth girl sensitive. She's like a walking, talking cartoon, though she doesn't talk about it. And that she told me that story like 10 years ago. But there's other stuff I could tell you about my stuff as a child, as a youngster. But like, as far as what might work its way into the show, Curtis Kilgore in the Death Island arc, the boy who sees the shadow that's not his daddy, is based on a friend of mine who lost his mom when we were in high school. And his mom and my mom were best friends in high school. And that's how we knew each other, because my mom would go, hey, his mom got cancer and died when we were in 11th grade. And I stayed the night at his house so many times. Like, this is my friend who was actually passing through a while back. And it was about a couple of months after his mom had died. I'd spent the night over there, and his dad was, his dad worked in the mines for a minute. And his dad eventually became a respiratory therapist. And I was in the kitchen. I was the first one up. And I was eating coconut donuts in his, like those little Debbie packs. That and Dr. Pepper remind me of his house so much. That's all that was ever there. And I look up, and there was like, a home interiors mirror, with like some nice ornamentation on it. Home interiors, hanging on the wall in the kitchen there. And I look up, and I see his mom. And she looked the way she looked before she died. And I'm still half asleep. And to this day, she said to me, you take care of him. And I heard her, saw her lips move, saw her bald as she was. And I went back and laid on the couch and went back to sleep, wrote it off as a dream for the longest time. But like, his mom died when we were in 11th grade. And then there was just a chain of death of friends and loved ones that followed him the rest of his life. So when I wrote Curtis, that's not my friend's story, but I grew up with a boy who was haunted. But yeah.
And kind of, because that's where, creatives and the like pull from our personal experiences. So it's cool to hear all the little nods to like those people that or something that it's like, of course it's dramatized in a horror podcast. So it's like, no, this didn't actually happen to me. But those little things that, make the story come and have a different life, but kind of like a homage to growing up and stuff is like, it's perfect. That's why you feel like it's the fucking Stand By Me, because that's what you do.
Thank y'all so much.
Yeah,
thank you so much for having us on.
Real quick, so happy to have you. You can find them at Old Gods of Appalachia, wherever you listen. You can find them on social media. We'll put tags in the show notes, but we loved having you. Can't wait to talk again and have those beers at Burial one day when COVID's over.
Yeah, really. When the plague is over, y'all, we'll eat good food. We'll drink good beer. Everybody be safe. Wear your goddamn masks and stay home. Love y'all. See you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.